Exploring the great outdoors has always carried a hidden danger. Mountains, rivers, and untamed wilderness can give us a sense of freedom, but they can also take lives in an instant. In this video, we'll dive into 5 real-life stories of outdoor adventures that ended in shocking, tragic deaths. Each case reveals how quickly excitement can turn into horror when nature shows its ruthless side. It was September 14th, 2004, deep in the wilderness of Yukon, Canada. A float plane glided over the glassy waters of Reed Lakes, tucked into the southern slopes of the Selwyn Mountains, before gently touching down. This was a place few humans ever saw 175 miles north of Whitehorse, with the nearest settlement, Stewart Crossing, 15 miles away. Only the most seasoned hunters or wildlife experts dared venture here. On board was 49-year-old Bart Schleyer, a man whose life was defined by the wild. He had come for a 2-week solo expedition, fully prepared, or so everyone thought. Bart wasn't an ordinary outdoorsman. He was a wildlife biologist, hunter, and survival expert who had spent decades navigating some of the world's most unforgiving landscapes. Born in Cheyenne, Wyoming in 1955, he grew up under the guidance of his father, Dr. Otis Schleyer, a physician and hunter. At just 10 years old, Bart joined his father on a safari in Mozambique, a trip that would ignite a lifelong obsession with the animal kingdom. From drawing wildlife in meticulous detail to studying their behavior, Bart's fascination was unmatched. By 1979, he had earned a master's degree in wildlife biology from Montana State University. Professors remembered him as someone who seemed to understand animals in a way few ever could. He worked on the grizzly bear recovery project in Yellowstone, capturing and tagging bears with radio collars. Later, he traveled to the Russian wilderness to study endangered Siberian tigers, where he lived with a partner, Tanya Perova, and their son, Artyom. Bart thrived in the wild, building his own bows and arrows, hunting and surviving for months in isolation where others would falter. When he arrived at Reed Lakes, he carried with him 3 large containers of food, a tent, clothing, and an inflatable boat. He was ready for anything, or so it seemed. But when the float plane returned 2 weeks later, Bart was gone. His supplies remained untouched, but there was no sign of him. On September 30th, he was reported missing. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police launched a search. They found traces of food and his inflatable boat half a mile from camp, hinting that he might have tried to walk toward the highway. But the wilderness had other plans. Worsening weather forced the search to halt, yet Bart's close friend Dib Williams refused to believe the story ended there. Together with pilot Wayne Curry, they returned, scanning the frozen, silent expanse. What they found sent a shiver down their spines. Bart's tent had collapsed, everything inside untouched, his backpack, knife, radio, even the bear he had brought along. This was a man who never abandoned his gear. The next day, more clues emerged. His bow leaning against a spruce, a handmade quiver, a dry bag. It appeared Bart had been calling for moose, perhaps one last time. Then came the haunting discovery, a camouflage face mask, smeared with blood and hair. The RCMP were called back. The new search revealed animal tracks, scattered clothing, a cap, a camera, and part of a human skull. Dental records confirmed Bart Schleyer was dead. The evidence suggested a grizzly attack, drawing uncomfortable comparisons to Timothy Treadwell in Alaska. But friends and fellow experts questioned it. Bart was one of the most skilled wilderness experts alive. Could a bear, or even wolves, really sneak up on him? His clothing showed almost no damage, his skull bore no bite or claw marks, and his food remained untouched, an oddity in any predator attack. Some whispered of a sudden medical emergency. Others quietly speculated about foul play, perhaps linked to his time in Russia. No one knows for certain. What is clear is that in September 2004, the wild claimed one of its most capable and fearless explorers, Bart Schleyer, a man who had stared into the eyes of Siberian tigers and grizzlies alike, met a fate that even he could not survive. It was June 9th, 2025, deep inside the remote Fractos forest of northeastern Greece, a place so wild and untouched that even seasoned hikers rarely set foot there. Into this wilderness ventured 61-year-old Christos Stavrianides and his close friend Demetrius Kouglou. They weren't out for a casual hike. They were on a mission tied to a forgotten chapter of history. A year earlier, Christos had stumbled upon something extraordinary: the wreck of a World War II Greek warplane, hidden for more than 70 years and still remarkably intact. It haunted him, this rusting relic of the past lying alone in the forest. He wanted others to be able to find it safely, to preserve it before nature swallowed it completely. And so he returned, determined to map out a route. Christos wasn't some inexperienced adventurer. He and Demetrius knew the mountains well. They carried pepper spray, gear, and even brought along a dog for protection. Everything about the trip said they were ready for anything, but the wilderness had its own plans. As they pushed deeper into the rugged Rhodope Mountains, Christos began filming with his phone. The early footage was calm, trees swaying, birds calling, sunlight slipping between branches. But then, something emerged from the quiet. Christos spotted movement, a large brown bear. He called out to Demetrius to get the pepper spray ready. Moments later, the bear stepped into the frame. The dog reacted first, charging, barking, snapping. The forest erupted into chaos. Demetrius managed to spray the bear, and for a moment, it seemed to work. The animal retreated, shaking its head. But instead of disappearing into the trees, it redirected its focus and locked onto Christos, who was standing dangerously close to a cliff edge he hadn't noticed. Christos had already used up his own spray. Demetrius later said the bear didn't look like a killer. It looked frightened, confused, reacting out of instinct. But fear doesn't make an animal less dangerous. In a sudden burst of movement, the bear lunged forward, not to maul Christos, but to push back, to defend itself. That one swift motion was enough. Christos lost his footing. There was no time to grab onto anything. One slip, and he plunged into the ravine below, a drop of more than 2,600 feet. Demetrius scrambled up a tree for safety, calling for help with shaking hands. When rescuers finally arrived, the forest told the story clearly. Broken branches, scattered gear, enormous paw prints, and Christos's phone, still recording until the moment the world dropped out beneath him. At the bottom of the ravine, they found his body. The fall had killed him instantly. The forensic report confirmed it. No bite marks, no claw wounds. Only catastrophic fall injuries. Shattered ribs, fractured spine, massive internal bleeding. It was not a predatory attack. It was one split second of panic, one defensive shove from a startled animal, and one step too close to the edge. Wildlife experts later explained that Greek brown bears are rarely aggressive. This one likely saw the men and the dog as a threat, and in the confusion, the dog's second rush might have triggered the bear's return, turning a retreat into a fatal encounter. Authorities reviewed the recovered video. It captured Christos's calm filming, then sudden tension, his voice calling to Demetrius, the dog barking wildly, the sound of pepper spray, the bear's low growl, then silence, and the cut-off clip that marked the moment he fell. Christos's funeral was held days later in his hometown of Drama, Greece. His wife, his 3 children, and countless friends struggled to grasp how a man who had spent his life navigating mountains could be lost so suddenly. He had simply wanted to guide others to a hidden piece of history. Instead, he became part of one. Today, Greece has only around 450 to 500 brown bears left. They avoid humans. They disappear before they attack. It was May 21st, 2025, in Scottsdale, Arizona. By late afternoon, the temperature had hit 102 degrees. That's when 31-year-old Hannah Moody pulled into the Gateway Trailhead at the McDowell Sonoran Preserve. She'd hiked here countless times before. This place felt familiar, almost safe, but the desert can betray anyone, even those who love it most. Hannah wasn't just another hiker. With more than 44,000 Instagram followers, she shared her faith, her fitness journey, and the peace she found in Arizona's mountains. Her series, Hikes with Han, had become a gentle sanctuary online. videos filled with gratitude, scripture, and hope. Just days before this hike, she posted about how blessed she felt to be exploring the desert again. Nobody knew that post would become her last. She was supposed to meet friends that evening. She always showed up, she always answered. So when her phone stayed silent, they felt fear long before they admitted it. At 7:50 p.m., police were called. Her car was still parked exactly where she left it. No tracks leading away, no signs of danger, just absence, heavy and worrying. As night fell, officers scoured the desert on foot and bike. Drones buzzed overhead. A helicopter swept the darkening landscape with its spotlight. But the desert swallowed everything: sound, light, hope. By 11:30 p.m., visibility was gone. The search had to pause. At sunrise, more than 20 officers returned, joined by the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office. The desert didn't care about urgency. It was silent, endless, indifferent. Just after noon, a helicopter spotted something far from the trail, about 600 yards out. A body, exposed, alone. It was Hannah. She had collapsed only 550 meters from the parking lot, close enough to see it if she had been standing upright. Investigators believe she might have stepped off the trail to rest or take what looked like a shortcut. But the heat out here is deceptive. One wrong turn, one extra minute in the open, one moment of dizziness. That's all it takes. The medical examiner's report was devastating. Death by heat exposure, no alcohol, no substances, no medical condition, no struggle, just the brutal, silent force of the desert. Her body showed the early signs of decomposition and minor injuries from falling as she became disoriented. She likely never had the strength to call for help. That might be the hardest part, how close she was, how little the distance mattered. Her mother, Terry, could barely speak through the grief. We're trying to piece it all together. I hope she didn't suffer. I hope she wasn't aware. Her friend Megan described Hannah as someone who made strangers feel seen. To honor her, Megan organized a sunrise hike on May 31st, what should have been Hannah's 32nd birthday. People showed up with candles, prayers, tears, and stories of how Hannah had touched their lives, many of them from people she'd never even met in person. Before her life became intertwined with hiking and faith, Hannah spent nearly a decade working as a dancer. Leaving that world was a hard, messy transition. She rebuilt herself through bodybuilding and 5 amateur competitions, where she earned national recognition. But it was her faith that anchored her. In her videos, she talked about surrendering, trusting, letting go of the weight she carried. She believed in purpose, she believed in gratitude, and she believed in beauty, even in the most desolate parts of the desert. In one of her final videos, she talked with a bright, relieved smile about her new restaurant job giving her more time for sunset hikes. She called it a blessing. And then, days later, she took her last hike. Months after her passing, her family posted a final message to her Instagram. She died doing what she adored. Know that you were all precious and loved by her. Thousands responded. Some left prayers. Some wrote how she helped them through dark moments. Others simply said they missed her. It was April 3rd, 2006, in La Grave, France, a place where the mountains don't just rise, they loom, they judge, they wait. The air was sharp, the snow untouched, the kind of morning that tempts even the most seasoned adventurers to go steeper, push harder. And that's exactly where 48-year-old American extreme skier Doug Coombs was headed. Doug wasn't a weekend skier. He was a pioneer, one of the men who defined extreme skiing itself. Born in Boston, raised on the icy slopes of New England, shaped by Montana State and sharpened in Jackson Hole, Doug lived for the feeling of dancing down slopes so steep they looked vertical. He co-founded Valdez Heli Ski Guides, won 2 World Extreme Skiing Championships, and mentored a generation of skiers. But titles never mattered to him. Freedom did. By the early 2000s, La Grave had become his sanctuary, raw, ungroomed, untouched, and utterly unforgiving. No ski patrol, no boundaries, just a cable car that dropped you into chaos. That's where Doug felt most alive. That morning, he was with 30-year-old guide-in-training Chad Vanderham. They approached the Couloir de Polichinelle, a 50-55 degree chute where one mistake becomes a freefall. Mid-descent, Chad slipped. One moment of instability and he was gone. Doug didn't think. He moved to help, and that's who he was, but the slope didn't care. Doug slipped too. Both men fell nearly 500 feet. Doug died instantly. Chad survived the impact, but later passed away. The skiing world shattered. Arguments followed. Was LaGrave too dangerous, or was its danger the very point? Doug himself had always chased risk, even getting banned from Jackson Hole for pushing boundaries. But this time, skill wasn't enough. Precision wasn't enough. The mountain chose otherwise. A decade later, friends returned quietly and placed plaques in their memory. Snow buried them, but not the legacy. Doug Coombs was a husband, father, mentor, and icon. A man who shaped a sport. But that day in LaGrave proved one thing. In the mountains, even legends are mortal. It was July 19th, 2025, in Yosemite National Park, a place people visit to feel alive, not to come face to face with death. Angela Lin, a 29-year-old Google software engineer, was on a simple weekend hike with her boyfriend, David Hua, and two close friends. Alumni Grove was supposed to be peaceful, a trail filled with ancient sequoias, glowing in the warm California sun. Nothing dangerous, nothing unusual. Just a quiet walk through giants. Angela was the careful one in the group. She followed every rule, read every sign, stayed on marked paths. The weather was perfect blue sky, still air, not even a hint of wind. But, as everyone would soon learn, nature doesn't always give warnings. They were standing near the trees, admiring the view, when a single sound cut through the quiet, a loud, sharp crack from above. David later said it happened in only 2 or 3 seconds. A sound, a blur, then chaos. Massive branches began crashing down like spears. One of them struck Angela. David closed his eyes for a split second, and when he opened them, she was on the ground, face up, blood spreading beneath her head. She wasn't moving. He dropped to his knees, calling her name, begging her to breathe. He dialed 911 with shaking hands, then fought desperately to keep her alive, performing CPR until a ranger arrived. But paramedics later said the truth no one wanted to hear. Angela likely died instantly. The impact had been too severe. The sheriff's office confirmed her death as accidental blunt force injuries, a falling tree branch on a windless day on a safe trail. Officials closed the area for a week, but even now, they haven't explained what made the branch fall. Angela's boyfriend says the Park Service has offered almost no answers. His frustration grew so heavy, he eventually turned to the media, demanding to know how something like this could happen without any warning at all. A tourist who witnessed the aftermath wrote on Reddit that the memory haunted them since. They said the group wasn't doing anything wrong. Life can be so cruel, they wrote. Angela's own story made the loss feel even heavier. She graduated from UC Berkeley, earned her master's at UT Austin, worked at Salesforce, then joined Google, where colleagues remembered her as brilliant, gentle, and uplifting. She was the kind of person who brought chocolate to late-night study sessions just to keep everyone smiling. She loved swing dancing, singing, hiking. She loved life, and she loved David. They had known each other since college. He said she was the most cautious person he had ever met, which is why this didn't feel like an accident. It felt like a nightmare. One moment of silence, one crack of wood, one instant that changed everything. Yosemite has seen falling tree fatalities before, but Angela's case was different. No storm, no wind, no rotten trunk, no warning at all. The investigation continues, but the people who loved her are left with nothing. No answers, no closure, just grief and a question no one can answer. How can someone die when they're doing everything right? Angela Lin was 29. Brilliant, loved, careful, hopeful. She wasn't climbing cliffs or crossing rivers. She wasn't taking risks. She was just standing under a tree, and in one silent moment her life was gone.